As you can see, we're a group that's based in Cambridge, but as Martin alluded to, we have been working in partnership with the American Society for Nutrition. So we're coming into the 10th year of our inception in terms of our Global Centre for Nutrition and Health. And although we're anchored in Cambridge, we actually nowadays work across 12 countries. And so we take the global in our name rather seriously, and that does include the value that is brought from our partnerships, particularly with our American counterparts. So it's a great privilege to be here and to share with you today. The other thing I recall from a couple of meetings ago in Boston, which I think was 2015, David at the table in the middle there said to me that actually it's great to hear about all of the successes in the UK, but I'm not sure whether that's necessarily going to be useful in the context of what's done across the pond and in other parts of the world. So that got me thinking, and so whilst I'll talk about some of the successes and perhaps use the same slides that I would to do a wow show, I will also try and talk about some of the things that didn't work in our experience and maybe some of the shortcomings, because I think that there might be important generic learning there so that A, we don't reinvent wheels, and B, we don't do that across borders. But before I jump into any of that, I'm just going to say a little bit about positioning, partnerships and people. So you might notice that this slide looks a little bit like a Formula One racing car with all the different representative organisations on it. But there's a reason for that. And that's probably quite important to what we're going to talk about in terms of engaging everyone from medical students through curriculum planners to an interprofessional body, as well as, very importantly, the medical profession. So positioning, we have found, is actually extremely important, and whilst our central positioning comes from Cambridge University Health Partners, which is the confluence of our medical school as well as the health service, we also have another very important university partnership in being twinned with Ulster. And the reason for that is because whilst Cambridge has a leading medical school, we do not have any allied health professions. So that's learning number one. If you are sitting in a context where you're isolated in terms of being in a medical school or actually being in a very medical facility, it's really quite important to engage with allied health professions, and particularly centres of excellence in nutrition and dietetics. So Ulster happens to be the leading allied health professions school in our country, and it also does not have a medical school. So nice hand and glove partnership there. So going from positioning to partnerships. We also felt that it was really important to be close to the source of regulated nutrition practice, which in the context of the UK is through the role of the registered dietitian, particularly in health service settings. So we have a very fundamentally important relationship with the British Dietetic Association, which in many ways acts as a quality control mechanism for much of the messaging that we put out, such that it's not in conflict with those put out by the dietetic profession. It's also important to have a base for scholarly exchange because, as I've said, we're working across borders, and so Shivani's already mentioned that we have an annual gathering in the form of our summer school and summit, and Wolfson College provides us with that, but it provides us with quite a bit more in that we have the ability to actually cross-point people into Cambridge from across the countries where we work, and therefore reduce some of the gaps between geographical boundaries. I also have found, all of us in fact, have found that over the years there seem to be two contingents of nutrition education. One that caters to the pointy end of everything that we consider clinical and medical, and another one which is much more at the public interface. But many of the research models, particularly those which allow us to evaluate effectiveness have been developed in the social behaviour change models that are promulgated by the Society for Nutrition Education and Behaviour. So since our inception, we have been working in close partnership with them, and more recently with the United Nations funded Global Open Data for Agriculture and Nutrition partnership, which in addition to providing funding and sustenance across our network, also provides us with a very important connection between human nutrition on one side and agricultural nutrition on the other. So really, after we did all of this positioning, we sort of thought, okay, we'll retire now, but in fact we had a bit more to do. And we had to make arguments to actually engage not just medical students, but those who gatekeep curricula. So our main argument was really around the double nutritional burden, which I don't need to talk more to this audience about. But in fact, there were different levers from this which acted as entry points, depending on who we were talking to. And in fact, sometimes changing the message from double to triple, particularly when we're bringing micronutrient deficiencies into the picture, meant that we could actually open doors and tuck ourselves into the most appropriate places across curricula. So the way we try to look at the solution to the conundrum, that is the knowledge gap in nutrition and medical education, is not just through knowledge creation, which research is doing all the time, whether it's basic sciences or population health and this ladder. We're also very cognizant that as we go up this ladder, there's more and more and more information coming at us all the time. And this conference, i.e. the ASN-NNEdPro, is a great example of how there will be thousands of new knowledge bites just this year. But what are we actually going to do with them? So we see it as our role to try and translate. But in order to do that, one of the things that we found works is to use the knowledge to action cycle. So later on you'll hear from Dan Del Rio. Yes, that's Dan. Sorry, the photo doesn't do justice, but you can speak to Dan in the break, but he will also speak later on in Martin's section on how, as a basic scientist, that connection between where the cutting edge of nutrition research is and where the pointy edge of translation is extremely important. And then we have Shivani, who is actually part of tomorrow's workforce, but also the person who does quite a lot of our translation. And be careful what you say, because Shivani is putting together themes from today's discussions, which you will find published in a two-page spread, similar to a couple of the things that you see on the tables today. But if we manage to move from A to B through the course of today's discussions, which I very much hope will happen, because what we really don't want is to be in the same place that we were when we had the last one of these sessions, then we do have a special issue of a peer-reviewed publication this year where we will actually position some of the proceedings from today against a range of about 20 articles that speak to a call to action around what needs to be done across borders in medical nutrition education. And then, of course, we've got Captain Kohlmeier, who is across the piece, and for those of you who don't know, is now cross-appointed into Cambridge University, and therefore keeping that connection between what we're doing and what's happening on this side of what we call the pond. I think it's very important in our mission not to forget that acting in isolation doesn't work. We have done that many times over the past 10 years, and it's always ended in a dead end. So we remind ourselves every day that our partnership needs to include doctors, dietitians, nutritionists, who in the UK refer to nutrition researchers, as well as a range of other stakeholders who are also not from the nutrition professions, but are sympathisers or facilitators. And whilst we aim to deliver medical education, I think doing research into the impact of that delivery is something that needs to go hand in hand. We've sometimes not been very good at translating findings from research into medical nutrition education back into delivery. So going back to David's point, that's one of the things where I think that not just our group, but groups across the world can improve, because it doesn't end with the publication of a journal paper. We need to have much more of this sort of discussion to take stock of what needs to change, because people usually think they know what's happening in their backyard, but that's dynamic, and it's not the case that things will be the same as what they were 5 years ago in terms of what worked and what didn't for medical students. Again, I think we as a group should be reminding our esteemed pure research colleagues to try and do at least some part of their research in a way that can be translated back to education. And this is really an area where we've also had limited success. So we have a network of maybe about 120 researchers all over the world, and I would say only about 25% of those individuals are currently able to do their research in a way that we can translate readily. So that's certainly another area for improvement, and building capacity and policy impact is still a little bit of a pending piece. This is Harrison Carter. The reason I've put him up here is because he's been working with us for the past 2 years on a qualitative survey led by the British Medical Students Committee, of which Harrison is the national chair. That includes the deans of UK medical schools. And the reason we've gone for a qualitative survey is because we've done quantitative surveys before, and whilst it's all very well tracking the progress or lack of it, or sitting with abysmal or depressing figures, I think it's also very important to ask qualitatively what the facilitators and barriers really are to implementation at the level of medical students, at the level of medical educators, but also at the level of medical deans and curriculum planners. So if you have 20 topics, but space for only 5, how would you prioritise those 5? And I think the way to find out is also partly through reassessment of where the biggest knowledge gaps lie. You might need to do some picking and choosing. So we again have suffered in the past by not doing that, by taking a massive curriculum that's been very well evidenced as being important by the Academy of Medical Royal Colleges, and trying to tuck as many things from that curriculum as possible into whichever nook or cranny we could find. And that really has had limited success. So hopefully this survey will inform us where the greatest needs are. And if we can create a very strong nucleus there, I'm pretty sure that we can build around that. We do nowadays have a General Medical Council supported postgraduate competency framework, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that in the discussion later on around physician nutrition specialists. Just for further information, these are citations of a few papers that some of you will have seen before, but what I want to highlight here is engaging medical students is not just about telling them what the duties of a doctor are and the 5 key things they need to know on the wards. It's also about inspiring them, and what we found is that yes, they respond to things such as assessment requirements, mandatory competency requirements, but they also respond, and in our case through studies that we've done, have responded really well to the notion that actually bottom-up clinical leadership is something that can be demonstrated by bringing nutrition up the agenda. And that's now become a model that we have tested in interventional studies, not just in the UK, but in Canada. There are a number of papers which have been published already from a 4-province study in Canada, and we've also tested this in Australia and India, and we found the same thing in all of these very different countries, that in fact engaging medical students and junior doctors once they've graduated can often be done through the notion of clinical leadership being married up with clinical nutrition. I won't say too much more about the application across borders, other than to say that we've collaborated with ASN, Martin and various others, and consistently we've found that we have way more in common than we do apart. So having this sort of gathering In fact, comparing notes is something that we need to continue doing, but we need much more medical student engagement by having them at the table. And that seems to work quite well in the UK, but again, going over our shortcomings, that's something which we've not been very good at doing in the past. We've had much more of an ivory tower approach where the expert medical nutrition educators have known what's best without adequate involvement of medical students at the table. So that's another area which we are working to improve. And really, our vision is to see medical nutrition education as a global village. This is where we have collaborations at the moment. I've circled Canada, India, and Australia, New Zealand, because this is where nutrition education and leadership as a conceptual model seem to have worked. And really, this is just to open discussions, but I must say that we have benefited from having a diverse core, and 3 of our core members are here with me today, but there are many others who are working tirelessly in the background, situated across those countries that I previously alluded to, and it would be wonderful to add to the richness as well as the outcomes of discussions by having your participation, not just today, but onwards and upwards. So thank you very much, and back to Martin.